What's up, family? It's Friday night, and so it means it's time for Netflix and chill.
It's Friday. Hey guys, how you doing?
I'm Overseer Danny Bland. This is my wife, Lady Melanie Bland.
Yes, yes, yes.
And if you're in here tonight, do us a favor. Let us know that you're on by putting your name on the screen and letting us know that you're here. Let's see who's in. I see Aaron. I see Lucretia. I see Yolanda.
Hey guys.
Put your name in the comment section. Let us know that you're on so we can greet you all. And I'm excited to. We got a lot to discuss. We've been watching the documentary Becoming,
Yes.
and so I'm interested to see what that looks like and to see what you all thought about that. Let's see. I see Tanya's on here. Gina, Cheryl, Lucretia. What's up, Lucretia? Yeah, come on in, put your name in there. Let us know that you're on tonight. It's a really cool, really nice day out today.
It's really, really nice. Did y'all get a chance to go outside and get some sunshine? It was like perfect weather. It was warm. The wind was blowing slightly. The sun was shining. Did y'all get any time outside today?
And so hopefully you had a chance to get out there. I see Barry is on, Lou Esther, Cheryl. What's up, y'all? Welcome on in the room. Y'all surprise me every week because the nicer it gets, I tell myself, I was like, I don't know who's going to be on here tonight. They're probably going to be outside, but I'm glad to see that you all are still safe
Yes.
and, practicing proper precautions. We went out earlier and had to go do some grocery shopping and some things like that.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't want to come back, but, but I was like, I don't know where else we go. So we should just come home. And so
Right.
um, come on in the room tonight. This weekend is Memorial Day weekend.
It is.
Monday is the actual holiday,
It
but
is.
we consider this weekend that's
Yep.
connected to it to be Memorial Day weekend,
Mhm.
and it's a really big like cookout time.
It is. It's the official, unofficial start to the summer.
Right. That's usually like the first like cookout.
Mhm.
And then not too long after that, then you got Fourth of July and some other things. And
Right.
so I'm wondering, what are you all doing for Memorial Day? What are your Memorial Day plans? What are y'all going to be doing with your family, with yourself? Do you have plans? Do you not have plans? What is that going to look like for you all? We want to know. We want to know. Tell us, what are your Memorial Day plans? Lucretia said she just got home. She just got home. She might have been working. I don't know. I'm sure she was doing something safe.
All right.
Um,
Please be safe.
I see Sylvia's on here. Reverend Joanne is on here. The question of the day, what we want to know is we want to know what are your Memorial Day plans? What are your Memorial Day plans? What do you plan on doing for Memorial Day? Lady Blaine, do you have any Memorial Day plans?
I don't. I'm looking forward to a work-free weekday.
Hmm. For those of you who don't know, Lady Bland is kind of like a workaholic, and so she's been working a lot
A lot.
and volunteering too.
I know.
I ran into some of the members in the store a couple of hours ago, and I was telling them about how you signed yourself up to volunteer for Kate Spade Hotline or something like that. Or
Yes, the
do you want to
Christ.
tell them a little bit about what you're doing with that?
For those who don't know, I'm a psychologist by trade, so that's what I do. My full-time job. I do private practice as well. And Kate Spade sent me an email, asked if I wanted to help with being a crisis counselor. It's like, I know Kate Spade passed, guys. I know, but I enjoy her brand, especially her clothing. So I got the email and I looked further into it, and there's a text service where you're able to text for support if you're in crisis. So I volunteered for it, did the application, a super long application, had to get references, had to do a background check, all of this stuff. And my husband's like, you don't do enough? And I do. I definitely have enough on my plate, but I committed to volunteer for 10 hours a week just to be able to give back in another way.
Kudos to you. I got enough on my plate. I won't be volunteering for anything else, but thank you for doing that. But no Kate Spade hotline this weekend, right?
I actually have a couple hours that I need to give them, so I kind of forgot. So we'll see.
Y'all pray for me.
I'm
Well,
going to do them while you sleeping.
all right. So let's see what the people are doing for Memorial Day. Lucretia said she's having to cook out lots of food. Send us some food, Lucretia. Is it Lucretia that does the buffalo dip?
Yes.
It is. So
Buffalo
are you
chicken
going to
dip.
be doing that buffalo chicken dip for Memorial Day? Let us know. Gina said they're still trying to figure it out. Same here. I know that it's going to include the grill. That's all I know. But other than that, we're still trying to figure out. It's a work in progress. Tanya said working the holiday. And so shout out to the essential workers, healthcare workers who
Absolutely.
are working even on a holiday.
Yep.
You all are our heroes and sheroes, and
Real
so
MVPs.
we'll put a hot dog on the grill in your honor and in your stead. Um, Lucretia says she's going to be working too on Monday, so I guess they're going to cook out this weekend and then she's going to
Okay.
go to work on Monday.
Okay.
Sylvia says 68 and in the house. We'll talk to family. Amen. Listen, that ain't never hurt anybody. Tiffany said she's going to eat a couple Georgia Hots and sip on some root beer.
All
Root beer.
right.
Yeah. You know what? Root beer is probably one of the only sodas I've never really been able to get into.
Really?
I don't know what it is. I mean, I'll kind of drink anything really, but root beer, it has like a really distinct taste. That root beer, birch beer, any of those, I don't know.
I don't.
I don't
I
know.
like ginger beer.
Yeah, maybe that might be the holiness side of me, just because it has the
The word
word
beer in
bear.
it.
My spirit can't get with it,
All right.
and I don't know what it is, but I've never been able to get into to root beer. Brenda said I won't be able to make it to 392 per the president. Um, well, that is very
We
interesting.
gotta talk about
So
that.
yeah, so just I think that was today,
Yeah,
right?
just a few hours
A
ago.
few hours ago, the President of the United States hosted a national press conference in which he kind of is forcing the governor's hands to include churches as essential places
Right.
and pastors to the list of essential workers.
Right.
And where I do agree that pastors are essential workers,
I
because even
agree.
in this time, there are still things that we're still doing and things like that. And
Absolutely.
ministry workers are essential
Absolutely.
workers. You know, I think that we also have to be very careful. And
Right.
so, you know, his statement, I think, which I heard you were watching, I was kind of listening in and out, but his statement to the governors was that he wanted all the governors of every state to open up all churches, mosques, synagogues, cathedrals
Right.
this weekend.
This weekend, he said.
This weekend, no plan, no nothing. Just open up this weekend. Just have church.
Right.
And let me tell you something. I don't care what the governor of Connecticut does. We will not be open this weekend, unfortunately,
Right.
because where on one hand I do admire him standing up for the church and saying that the church should have a space and should have their own voice. I do think that even in that, we should still exercise wisdom.
Absolutely.
And so we will still be streaming this Sunday in Jesus' name.
In Jesus'
But
name.
it does kind of suck that we won't be able to be together, but it's
It
because we
does,
want to
but
be
we
safe.
want to be safe. We want to make sure everyone continues to be safe, be healthy. We also want to make sure that we're modeling proper behavior. So, and it's too early. You
Yeah.
know, the numbers are not decreasing the way that we would like to see them. So, I think for upmost is everyone's safety, and we want to make sure we
Absolutely.
do that.
Safety is key. Reverend Joanne said, You're an awesome woman of God.
Thank you.
And I agree with that. I agree with that. Volunteering the time that you don't have um, is certainly an awesome feat. Unfortunately, Christian says she's not making the buffalo chicken dip this time. Womp womp. All right, I guess, but I'm sure you make a lot of other good things too. That's the only thing that I know. Tiffany said that guy. Yeah, when it comes to the president these days. You just kind of don't know what to say, but that guy is about.
He need a little more Jesus. Listen, when that man said this weekend, he said anybody who have a problem with it, call me directly.
Yeah.
No, sir.
You
No,
know,
thank you.
sometimes when you're watching the media, you have to sort out what is heartfelt and what is a political play. And for me, you know, we're really close to election, and in times past, which we're going to talk about this because there were some comments about politics and voting and the election in the documentary that we watched this week. But unfortunately, because we're getting close to that November election date, you're going to see people do things not necessarily because it's in their heart, but because they feel as though it will resonate with a specific donor base or voter base, which is kind of politics. But
Very
anyway,
much so.
we didn't come on here to talk about politics, although the documentary that we watched this week is fairly political in some ways. So if this is your first time joining us, every Friday we come on here to talk about movies that we have watched, and this is just kind of our way to just come together, pass the time, to still be a part of a community
Right.
while social distance and remain
Absolutely.
connected.
Absolutely. It's really important for us to stay connected even during this time, to know that we're here and we're thinking about you guys. We're setting aside time for you guys. We love being able to see your comments and things like that in our connection groups. We love being able to see you guys. So it's really important. You know, last weekend we did something with our marriage ministry, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it was nice being able to see all the
Definitely.
married couples together. So connection is really important to us. I think even before this time, you know, we've always really been intentional to be connected with you guys. So we just want to be able to continue that.
Yeah, and so what we do is we come on here every single Friday and we pick a movie that we watch that movie during the week, and then on Fridays we come and we talk about it. And the movie that we have selected to discuss this week is a Netflix created documentary entitled Becoming, that follows the life of the former First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama. And it is entitled Becoming, after the book Becoming, which are her memoirs that talk about times before she was the first lady, during her being the first lady, and after
Yes.
her being first lady, and kind of who she is becoming.
Right.
And so it was a really cool documentary, to be honest with you. We watched this documentary because so many people reached out to us and suggested that this would be something to watch as a church family and to discuss and to get into. And my first time watching this documentary was actually this morning. And so it's been a little crazy for me. Normally, I get a chance to watch these things earlier, but this was I know you had watched the
I watched it a
documentary,
couple weeks ago.
prior to this, and this was something that I think you felt as well would be cool to talk about
Absolutely.
and discuss.
Michelle Obama, why not?
And so, Lady Bland, what were your initial thoughts concerning the documentary Becoming?
I thought it was cool being able to get that behind the scenes look into the First Lady's life. And I like that she incorporated other young women, other young girls into it as well. So it wasn't just all Michelle. It was also about, excuse me, helping other girls, other ladies to become as well. So I
Yeah.
thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and shout out to I've always admired Michelle Obama, but I feel as though after watching the documentary, I walked away with a new sense of respect for who she is and for what she has done and for what she has endured. But also, I think as just being an African American in the United States of America, I also walked away with a higher level of pride and esteem. Like, look at what we have done. And although, those are conversations that over the 8 years that they were in office that people felt or things. But sometimes when you reflect on a time, you have even a deeper appreciation for it, right?
Absolutely.
And so I felt that way. And so if you watch the documentary, I need to see some hands on the screen. If you watch the documentary Becoming, I want you to put your hand up on the screen. I'm just curious to see how many people watched the documentary with us this week. Some of you might have watched it for the third, the fourth. I think I saw Loretta last week. She said she was watching it for the fifth time, which I could definitely understand, because I think that it's one of those documentaries that probably every time you watch it, you probably get more and more out of it, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of great nuggets. There's a lot of really great things, really great messages and things throughout it. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see.
People are responding. I'm seeing Aaron. He said he watched it. Cheryl, Lucretia, Barry, People saying they watched it. Cherie. Um, yeah. So we had some people. Tanya. We're seeing the hands go on here. Um, Reverend Joanne said that she watched as well. Tiffany, and so um, Yolanda watched it. Um, uh, Telia watched it, and so
Okay, so y'all
quite a few
watched
people
it.
watched the
Okay.
documentary. I wasn't sure because this was like kind of like a little different.
Right.
It
It wasn't
wasn't a
a
movie,
movie. Right.
but I thought that this probably was better than some of the movies that we've seen in
Mm-hmm.
terms of something that is empowering, uplifting.
Absolutely.
How many of you all watched it with your families? Like, because that was something that, as I watched the documentary and I saw her passion for pouring into and imparting into specifically young minority women,
Right.
right? Young teenage
Right.
girls,
She said that was
college
her
students, and
passion.
things like that. And as I saw her, which it really conveyed throughout the documentary, her really wanting to inspire young women to be able to become the best version of themselves.
Right.
And as I watched that, I was like, wow, this is something that I'm hoping that people are watching with their children, that
Absolutely.
people are watching with their kids, with their daughters, even with their sons,
Absolutely.
to just be inspired to not have to settle for what other people say you have to be.
Exactly.
And one of the things that that kind of stuck out to me as well, I was watching the documentary. She talked about her guidance counselor,
Right.
who she had a desire to go to Princeton because her
Mm-hmm.
brother was also at Princeton.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, this was the first time in the documentary that I had ever seen her brother,
Yeah.
and they look so much alike, like they could be twins, like especially like in the eyes and the big cheeks,
Mm-hmm.
and so her older brother, really, it seemed like for her was an example in his own right,
Absolutely.
of perseverance, of
Mm-hmm.
excellence. She comes from the south side of Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
from a working class family, an everyday family.
Right.
They take you in the documentary through the house that she grew up in, and her house that she grew up in didn't look any bigger than the house that I grew up in. And so, because
Shows you it
sometimes
doesn't matter where you come from.
exactly. And that was what I found to be encouraging, because sometimes when we see people in certain places, we automatically dismiss ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I bet you they had this, or I bet you they had that. And the reality is, life is really what you make it.
Absolutely.
And so her brother goes to Princeton.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to go to Princeton. She wants to follow in her brother's footsteps. She goes to her guidance counselor, and her guidance counselor tells her that she's not Princeton material.
Right.
How did you feel about that?
Listen, I've had that experience with my little sister. Anyone who knows me knows I'm huge on family. My little sister is like my daughter. She tells me all the time, I'm not her mother, I'm her sister. But don't
No,
do
I'm
it.
just
Going through school, my sister is also significantly younger than me. So going through school, all her report card conferences, I was the one there. My mom was there too, but I was the one asking the questions and all of this stuff. And I will never forget. I think it
even in
was
college, even in college,
they didn't have report card night in
even
college,
in
but I
college,
did ask the
you definitely
questions.
called a couple
I did call a
professors
couple
and
professors because that's what I do. My sister is more timid. She's shy, but she is a stellar student, straight A's all the way
absolutely.
through. And I'll never forget, she was in either fifth or sixth grade, and we went to get her report card, and my sister was upset about a writing assignment. And I went, of course, to talk to the teacher about it, and the teacher was like, well, it was okay, but right now we're looking for a higher level. She goes to a magnet school, and I don't think she's college material. My heart started racing again just thinking about it. My mom had to look at me and say, breathe. I'm like, no, I will not breathe. How dare you?
First of all, this is the side of your first lady that you don't know. It reminds me of that scripture that says, "The kingdom suffer violence, and the violent take it by force."
Listen,
She could be pretty violent when she's passionate about something,
not
but rightfully so. Like right now, she got tears. She
violent.
got tears in her eyes right now. Y'all pray that we talking about
Not
15, 20 years ago.
not
Um,
violent, but very direct, and I'll always stand up for what I
well,
believe
you're
in.
an advocate. You are an advocate for
Absolutely.
others, and so
Absolutely.
um,
So when it comes to two people, my little sister and my husband, you just can't. You can't. So I had to let the teacher know. And from that moment on, I've always pushed my sister. I've always congratulated her. But from that moment on, it made me really realize the importance and the significance for me to push her even more and to be her biggest cheerleader. She'll tell anybody I'm her biggest cheerleader, and to really celebrate all of her accomplishments, because there's so many people in our children's lives that will tell them otherwise. And if they don't have you or have somebody there to push them and motivate them, they could easily fall into the other path.
And that's very true. I'm wondering how many of you all have ever been in a situation where someone has told you or someone that you love that you weren't good enough or that you weren't fit for that, because that was something that seemed like it was a defining moment for her to like prove to her guidance counselor, but I think her guidance counselor represented everybody in her life that slept on her,
Right,
and that doubted her,
right,
and that didn't think that she was good enough, whether it was because she came from the south side of Chicago, or because she was a woman, or because she was African American, or because her parents weren't from an Ivy League
right.
school. And she used that as fuel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about that, like, I preached a message about emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking more about the emotion of fear, but I think it's a principle that applies to all emotions. When you feel a certain emotional conviction, whether it is frustration, anger, whether it is intimidation,
Mm-hmm.
you can allow those things to rule you, to allow what people say about you to rule you and to become like a self-fulfilling
Right,
prophecy of what
right.
others have said. Or you
Absolutely.
could allow those things to fuel you
Mm-hmm.
and to say, I'm going to do better, I'm going to be better. And so certainly, she made it to the White House. And so
Listen.
I think that she
She's that
definitely,
guidance counselor now. I think she said that in the documentary. Like,
yeah.
"Ooh, you see me
Well,
now."
she the guidance counselor doesn't work at the school anymore.
Yeah, that's what she
And
said.
so Cheryl says she's a warrior. Lucretia said, I'm like that with my kids. She be ready. She's ready to go in. We know. We know. Tiffany said, I've had a similar experience. A staff member told me I shouldn't even apply to be a resident advisor, and then went on to say all the reasons I would not be chosen. Needless to say, I was a RA for three
See,
years.
you go to.
And so sometimes it really teaches you to, sometimes you just can't listen to other people.
Right.
And for some of us, it shows us that we have to become delivered from the opinions of others, because
That's
other
good.
people's opinions about us can have a way to cause us to miss out on things that God has put in our path to bless us. And if
Absolutely.
we listen to what other people say we can't do and we won't do,
Hmm.
we could really do that. We're keeping you in prayer, Lucretia. Don't worry. There were a couple of quotes from the documentary that stood out to me. Um, so she was being interviewed. She does this
The what?
45
City.
city
Mm-hmm.
tour
Yep.
to discuss the book.
Right.
And during this tour, they record the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first stops on the tour was Chicago, which is her hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And Gail, no, actually, I think it was Oprah who interviewed her in Chicago, another Chicago resident, right?
Right.
And Oprah asked her the question, when you left the White House, like when you walked out the White House, right, like when it was over and got on Air Force One, like what was it like for you? Were you excited? Were you whatever? And she said something that like I think about, but I don't think that I think as much about it as I should. She said that she sobbed for almost 30 minutes on the plane leaving the White House,
Mm-hmm.
but not for the reasons that we would think.
Right.
She didn't cry because she wasn't going to be in the White House anymore. What she said stood out to me. She said, I sobbed because for 8 years, I tried to do everything perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the weight of that responsibility was over.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't think about that a lot, but for minority people, especially for if you fall in a intersecting class, right? If for a minority woman, you have to be almost 10 times as better
Absolutely.
as other people.
Absolutely.
And so Can you talk about like even in what you do? I mean, I know like a lot of the fields and even in your work, like where you serve at, how far you've been able to go in certain companies and organizations. There are very few African American women, young, younger women there. And so, what is that like for you? To do you feel that pressure too, or what do you?
Absolutely. Well, part of it is just my own self motivation and myself just always wanting to be the best.
Mm,
But then I always think about everyone that's looking at me. So, absolutely, I feel like as an African American woman, that there's more eyes on me. The things that I do, the way that I speak, the way that I carry myself, the work that I do, I definitely think that there's more attention to it. As I think that there's so many negativity in the media about black women and how they behave. So I get the feedback all the time. Oh my goodness, you're so calm. You're so like, what does that mean? Like,
mm.
and I know that the majority of the time it's coming from a complimentary place, but I think so many times in the work field they expect something different from me. So for me, it's always important for me to make sure that my best is being shown and making sure that I'm being the best example. And especially for even my staff, I've always kind of had young staff, and for me, it's always been important for me to model for them what I expect from them and for something for them to thrive for.
Mm.
So I never want them to see this crazy woman that's fulfilling all these stereotypes and thinking that that's okay to be like that within the workplace or even in your personal life. So for me, there's definitely that pressure from myself, for others that's coming up behind me, as well as those above me who's watching me and the ones who are really going to give me these opportunities, you know. Remember, I helped a member with a work assignment, and she went on our website. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, Lady Bland, look at you giving color on there. You know, I'm the youngest director at my agency, one of two of color up there. So for me, those things are important."
And so you would say, yes, you definitely have felt that pressure of having to compete and to be much better than other people because people may not respect you as they should because of either gender or race or age or whatever
Absolutely.
ism it is that.
Absolutely.
Um,
You know, I think most people, whether they choose to admit it or not, have prejudices and biases, and they interact with people based on those things. So I always feel like every interaction you have with someone is your opportunity to show them different,
mm.
is your opportunity to show them that everyone is not the same. So, yes, I'm black. Yes, I'm Jamaican. Yes, I'm female. But what you have in your mind is not necessarily true.
That's good because I think sometimes, like, we always talk about minorities shattering the glass ceiling because there is a ceiling in business, there is a ceiling wherever you go, there is a place that people would like to keep you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we talk about shattering that glass ceiling or trying to rise above that, but also too, like it's about not just shattering the glass ceiling, but reframing and shattering stereotypes as well.
Absolutely.
And so that is something that I think that, we do it, and those of you who are online live tonight, I'm sure that you all are doing it. But for her, it was so important because she was under a microscope, and so she was able to do it in such a more cosmic way because she has so many different eyes on her. And I was so proud of her and so grateful that she provided such a classic example of grace, even while under pressure,
Absolutely.
of leadership,
Mm-hmm.
of intellect. I think a lot of people. I remember being in undergrad at the time that the Obamas were campaigning in the early 2000s, and I remember it. I remember hearing her talk on the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you see, and this is no shade to any of the other, but we have had African American candidates for the White House before,
Mm-hmm.
and they have not necessarily been the person for the job, hence they weren't elected.
Right.
But sometimes you see them and you're like, oh, okay, all right. And so I remember watching, I think it was CNN or something like that, and she comes to the podium, I'm like, okay, okay, this is Barack Obama's wife, and hearing her talk and hearing the confidence and the articulation and the power and the determination in big moments, even when the media did not deal with her favorably, right? It was something that I was like, this is something that I would want our young people to grow up watching and to grow up seeing. And the fact that she was truly an equal to President Obama,
Right.
And in some ways, probably greater.
Right. She was his tutor.
And
right?
so, right. And
So-
so I thought that was something that was really cool. Another quote, there were so many like quotable things
There were.
in this documentary. And I hope when you were watching this documentary, I hope y'all were taking notes. But she's talking in this documentary to a group of teenage girls. I don't know where she was at, but she was talking to one of the girls that questioned, why did you pick me to be able to be in this conversation with you? And she was asking that young girl, why not you? And she said something during that conversation that stood out to me. And I was like, wow. She said, I have been at every powerful table there is in the world.
Wow.
Like think about that.
Wow.
Every powerful table there is in the world, she said, I have sat at.
Wow.
From G summits to United Nations meetings to war briefings to what she said, I have sat at every single powerful table at the world, and I realized that some of the people at the table shouldn't have even been there.
Wow.
So many times we disqualify ourselves because we have this assumption out there, or this lofty ideal that we don't belong places, or that the people that are there are better than us, and sometimes the people that are there are waiting for us.
Right.
And so, I know that this is not Bible study, but I really want to encourage somebody tonight that you have a dream, you have a goal, you have an ideal, you have something, but right now you're looking at the people at the table and you're assuming that those people are at the table because they're better than you. Maybe those people are at the table because they are waiting for you. David said, the Lord prepares a table before me in the presence even of my enemies. And so sometimes we allow the table and what's on the table and what's being discussed at the table to intimidate us, when the reality is some of the rooms that we will walk in, God will allow us to be the blessing or the grace for that room. And so I know, like in my life, I've had like ideas. I've walked into certain strategic planning rooms or things like that, or people are planning this, or people discussing that, people that are far more influential to me and have far more reach and have far more accolades. But sometimes you do realize that the people are waiting for you at the table. And so I thought that was something that was good. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say about that.
No, I totally agree. I think that was really good. And the other thing that I like that she didn't talk too much about, but she showed through an example. And as we even look at the title, Becoming, she didn't just arrive and become our first lady, right? She worked hard throughout her life. And as you talk about showing this movie to our young people, I think it's important for them to see that you don't just arrive anywhere. You have to work hard for everything that you do. So from an early age, she knew that she came where she came from in Chicago. She knew the things that were stacked against her, but she worked hard in order to overcome that and to become out of that and to enter these places, to be able to sit at those tables. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and the other thing too, like when I was watching this documentary, like one word for me that came to mind when I thought about her were layers. There are so many different layers to her, and this is why you've got to be careful about how other people present people to you.
Right.
Because clearly, I mean, even though she felt like she could have been my aunt, she's not my aunt. So I don't have access to know these things about her, right? And so we know her based on how we have seen her in the media and things like that, how other people kind of have dressed her up. And for a lot of people, they would kind of dress her up as like a fashionable icon that has like these witty things. But when you really get to know her, you realize that she has so many different layers, that yes, she is intelligent, and yes, she is a leader, and yes, she is very witty, and yes, she is a mother, mother and lover. She's competitive, right? And so we kind of even see that, like she talks about the competition between her and her brother, right? Because her mom favors her older brother.
I thought that was
Um,
pretty interesting.
and well,
Right, he's
it
the boy and all of that. But even as the first lady of the United States, and she says this at one point, the favorite in the family is still the brother.
which I think see this is why I appreciated her honesty,
That's cool.
because so many times we feel as though success solves all of our problems.
That's good.
You
That's
know,
good.
and we feel as though once I get that, everything about what I'm going through is going to change. And the reality is, even being the first lady of the United States, there were still family dynamics that were going on. There was
Right.
still competition. There was still things that she felt as though she didn't have, when other people are looking at her like, oh, I can't wait to be her. And I wish
Right.
and you're
Right.
looking at her life like, I bet she doesn't have it all together. And there's still these other issues, right? I mean, it's funny because, her mother they're having dinner at the brother's house, and she's raving about the wine that the
Right.
brother is serving. And you could feel in that moment the tenseness, because she's like, we have wine at the White House
That's
too,
right.
and so
We have
so
eggnog.
I thought that was really really interesting, because sometimes, like, we feel like, if I just get to this place, everything,
Everything
it tells us that even when we arrive at the places that we fight to arrive at, there's still work that needs to be done. There will
Absolutely.
still be things there. And so we see this kind of competitive thing with her and her brother, right? That kind of is playing out throughout the whole thing. But then she talks about the competition. And I don't want to say competition, because it wasn't a competition as much as it was a personal challenge when it came to her and her relationship with Barack. Because she talked
Right.
about that, because, of course, when she meets Barack, she is in a place of authority, that she's mentoring him and she's
Right.
helping him out. And I appreciated her kind of telling the story about Barack, because it seemed like he was like a lot more laid back, relaxed than she was. And,
Right.
she talked about him coming in late to the first meeting and
Right.
things like
Right.
that, and them developing chemistry and attraction. But she said that when she realized, which I thought was like super powerful, because I'll be honest with you, as a man, sometimes we don't fully consider the adjustments sometimes that the women in our life have to make, and how much our life sometimes affects what the people in her life are able to do or not do. And she said that when she realized who Barack was becoming, she said that she knew that if she did not ground herself, he would become a tsunami that would sweep her away.
Wow.
And that depiction, for me, I was like, wow. I think she realized that who he is, you can't stop it. Who he's going to become, you're not going to be able to stop that. But if I don't find out who I am,
Right.
and if I don't find out what I can do, and if I don't find out what's on the inside of me, his desire, his dream, his life is going to literally sweep me away.
Right. That's
And
true.
I thought about that, because I think in every relationship, it's there is necessary for two to be one, but also for two to be individuals.
I agree.
And so
Absolutely.
he has his thing going on, and I like that they were. If you notice, they were very conscious, even in the documentary, not to make it about
Right.
Barack, or
Exactly.
not to make it about her being the wife of the president,
Right.
but her as an individual, and what she has accomplished. So I don't know. Did you what do you think about that, when you think about, like, she said that I did not want to become swept up in the tsunami?
I totally agree, and I've been there,
Yeah.
especially in our first years of our marriage. I felt like everything that I did had to be surrounded with you. It had to be what you wanted to do, all of your needs, all of your wants, and that being met. And I went through a season where I even started to disconnect from my friends because I was so wrapped up in your world and wanting to be the perfect spouse and wanting to be the perfect partner and making sure that all your needs were met, that mine went unmet. And not because you asked me to, because you never asked me to, but because I felt like that was my role until
Yeah.
I came to a place where I started to feel depleted. And I started to feel as if I was losing myself, and I didn't like that feeling. So I remember us having a conversation, and I'm like, you know what? I miss my friends and I miss me. So I'm going to hang out with my friends and I'm going to take time for me and I'm going to do these things because I felt that in order for me to be the best Mrs. Bland, I needed to first be the best Melanie.
Mm-hmm.
And I now make sure that I take time, always, not always as good as I need to, but really making sure that I take times for my friends, my family, and me, because those are the things that help me to be the best wife to you. So I definitely understand and see that.
And I remember that. I think that that's such a powerful revelation for us, but for everybody that it's okay to be you, right, and to explore what makes you happy. And Tiffany said that she does talk about this in the movie, the documentary rather, the First Lady. She says she mentioned that one thing that helped her was realizing her happiness was not dependent on President Obama making her happy. And finding out her own things and finding her own lane and her own niche in that. And Tanya's echoing that as well. And so there were some things like I wonder for those of you who are on here who are married or in serious relationships, how do you maintain partnership while still securing your own identity? What are some things that you all do in your relationships that allow you to still partner, to still be half to someone else, while at the same time not losing your identity? What are some things that you all do? Yolanda's saying, thanks, Lady Mel. That's good nuggets. Loretta said, "As we should, life will get away from you." That is so true. If you don't take care of life, life will get away from you. And further in the documentary, she talked about when she was becoming a mother, and how becoming a mother caused her again to kind of shift, because before she was this lawyer and she's married to this community organizer who is very charismatic, and she had a lot of dreams and a lot of things that she wanted to do, and she said that she didn't plan on becoming a mother when she did. And so that kind of took her by surprise. And she talked about how when her kids were young, how President Obama, he wasn't the president yet. I don't think even think he was senator yet. How he would like go to the gym and things like that, and how she would be frustrated at him for going to the gym while she stayed at home, and kind of like talking about that tsunami again. Like there are so many different tsunamis in life. So the tsunami of marriage, or the tsunami of motherhood, or the tsunami of being an entrepreneur, and how she came to an awakening even in that. Like, okay, I can't be mad at him for wanting to go to the gym. He's prioritizing his life, which he should. I should go to the gym. And so I should have those things while I'm still doing this. It doesn't mean that I just put my entire life on hold to be able to do that. And so, finding that motivation, and that was like a really, like, I don't know why that stuck out to me, but I think sometimes in life, there's so many different things that you're doing that sometimes become bigger than you. And you have to kind of manage those things. And so I want to see what other people are putting in here. Naqueva said, I keep my goals and desires in front of me. I remember that God has a call for me. That's important.
Good. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Reverend Joanne said, I can relate. I lost myself during my marriage. I agree with you, Lady Bland, because it can cause resentment if you're not watchful.
Listen, you have to take care of yourself. You absolutely have to. I remember we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary next week, and I remember it was maybe our 5th or 6th year, and I felt so overwhelmed. I felt like I was losing myself. We were supposed to go away. I think that was the year we were supposed to do New Orleans, and overseer had to work, so we didn't end up, and I felt like I was literally going to burst. And I took the weekend and I drove myself to Pennsylvania, to the Niagara Falls of the U.S., just to be, because I felt like I needed that time, and I'm grateful he didn't fully understand, but he didn't stop me from going. When I told people I was going by myself, they didn't understand, but I just really needed that time away just for me and God, just to remember who I am. because I had gone so long without doing it in increments that it was this buildup. And I was feeling like I wasn't myself anymore, and I'm in tune with myself enough to know when I'm acting out of character. So I know when I need that time. So really being able to take that time away in order for you to replenish. A lot of times we hear when people are married, two become one. And in our premarital classes, we teach people, two becoming one isn't two halves becoming
Right.
one.
Right.
It's two wholes becoming one. And in order to maintain that, you have to maintain your wholeness throughout the marriage. So you can't allow your spouse wants and needs to be so big that it overshadow what you need for yourself. There has to be that connection, that uniting together of both whole people coming together.
Absolutely. That's like super good, because I think that sometimes we have to be reminded of that, like even though we know it, that we need to take care of each other, but we also need to take care of ourselves.
Right.
And I'm looking at what other people are saying. Tanya said, I travel with my spouse often. Oh, I travel without my spouse often because I was so focused on my family, I lost myself. I had to learn to do me.
Absolutely.
Tiffany said, we and I are still learning. And
It's a
so,
process.
and I mean, because at every different level, what you need to maintain your own grounding is different.
Absolutely.
Right. And so you have to, you learn, you evolve. And sometimes you do get swept away in the tsunami, right? You get swept away in the tsunami of ministry, right? Sometimes you can get, and there's so many different things that if you're not careful, if you're not grounded, if you don't have an anchor, you will lose yourself to it. And instead of it becoming a place that enhances you, it'll overwhelm you,
Absolutely.
Um, yeah. There was Cheryl said, I learned how to incorporate my single self into my married life with ease. And so I think what she's saying, I don't want to speak for her, but I think what she's saying is that she learned how to incorporate things that made her happy when she
Right.
was by herself into the relationship now that she's with, her husband. And that's really key, right?
That's
To be able
important.
to take those things that make you who you are. Because also too, when they found you, that's what they loved about you.
True.
You
That's
know,
good.
and so many times, we get into relationships, we find people and they're engaged in things, they're doing things, they're about things, and those are things that attract us to that person.
Right.
And then when they lose those things because they're trying to become something else,
Right.
there is that grief of like, oh, I miss you being able to do that or that. And so,
Exactly.
or personally, you miss that.
Right.
And
it
so,
changes you. So
right.
that's great that you're able to do that. Sound like you had great premarital counseling, Cheryl.
Cherie said, I personally believe whether married or single, we all need me time. That's so true. Because you don't necessarily need to be married to have
Right.
me time, but
Right.
whenever you're in a relationship with other people, so if you are a parent, right, that you're constantly in a relationship with children, right, and the tsunami of motherhood or the tsunami of fatherhood, the anchor is finding that me time, right, that personal time to kind of do my thing. And Loretta's saying it goes in cycles, right? And so you're so right about that it does come in cycles and waves, and every now and then you'll need to check in. And so I'm sure that what she did when she was a mother became different than what she did when she was a senator's wife, which was probably different than what she needed to do when she was the president's wife. And now that she is the former first lady, right, it looks
little
different
different.
again. And so it does,
I-
it comes in cycles.
I absolutely love, though, throughout the documentary that we saw that she took her role as a mother seriously.
Absolutely.
Even by having sleepovers in the White House, and she talked about the last night there that the girls' friends wanted to come over, and she still taught her daughters that they needed to make their own beds, not the maids, and all of that. So being able to instill those things, I think, is so key, because I think because of where she came from, she knew how could be difficult for her daughters to really succeed in this world if they felt like things in life were this easy.
Right.
That you could just call someone and they'll make your bed, they'll make you anything you want to eat, they'll do your home, whatever it is. That no, you still have to be able to work hard to achieve what you want in life. So I thought that was really good.
Yeah, she was like a no nonsense mom. She talked about with I think it might have been Stephen Colbert. It was in her last interview about how when she came to the White House, how it was important for her to manage what her children grew up around.
Right.
And she talked about how when she came to the White House, the staff, the cooks, the butlers, the maids were mostly minorities
Right. And
in
tuxedos.
tuxedos, and she wanted to change the image of service,
Right.
and
That
it,
was
it
good.
felt, I think she was saying it in a very elegant way, but I think what she was trying to say is it felt very plantationish.
Of course.
And she wanted to really deconstruct that, even if just for her time, for her kids, and to also give dignity and esteem and honor to those who did serve. And she talked about how she would tell the maid staff not to make her kids beds because she wanted them to know
Right.
how to make their beds
Right.
even when they didn't live in the White House.
Right.
And I was like, wow.
I thought that was good. She said they still gonna make my bed, but don't make those
Right.
girls' beds.
Right. She was like,
I
and so
loved it.
so those things were kind of cool. There's some other things that I found out about her in this movie. One, I didn't know she played the piano. And so they show her there, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because we're almost done. But one thing that stood out to me, and I feel as though I might do a teaching series on this, is that becoming was such a great metaphor for life, right? And also at the same time, you know, the process of becoming is super complicated because she in this documentary, and I thought that whoever I don't know whoever I know that it's in there, but I told y'all give me some grace. I just watched it this morning, so I didn't have a chance to do a whole lot of research. I don't know who actually directed it, but kudos to whoever did the direction and the creative storyboard for this documentary because they were very strategic in how they told the story because they showed her in different light. They showed her as a sister. They showed her as a daughter. They showed her as a mother. They showed her as a wife. They showed her as a student, as a lawyer. They showed her as a first lady. But they showed those things in vignettes, and they were very clear that all those are things that she did. It wasn't necessarily who she was.
Right.
That at the core, she is her own being. Right. And those things, that's who I am when I'm with you. Right. And so even though, yes, I'm a husband always, but who I am as a husband is what happens when we share this space together. Right. And so, but I'm more than that. And you as a wife, yes, you are my wife, but you are so much more than just a wife. That's who you are when you share this space. Right.
Right.
And then when you go back home to your mother's house, even though you're a wife, you're a daughter there.
Absolutely.
Right. And so
Absolutely.
what you do in this house as a wife, you can't do in that house as a daughter. Right. And so sometimes we get wrapped up in the things that we do and we forget who we are.
Right.
And I like the way
good.
that they told that story because for me, sometimes I need to be reminded of that, that yes, okay, you're a pastor, you're a this, you're that, you're that. But at the core, who are you when you're not in those rooms? And who you are is who you are when you don't have anybody to placate.
Right.
Right. And so who
Right.
is that person working on that person, finding out, who you are. I like the different elements to her that I thought that I found her to be very, very witty, very quirky at times, very extroverted, introverted,
Right.
very thoughtful, silly. It was that thing. But I remember looking at the documentary this morning and seeing the weight of having to be all of these things to all these people.
Absolutely.
I don't know about you and I don't know about those who are watching, but as I was watching the documentary, she seemed, although she was free of her responsibility as a first lady, she seemed so heavy. The burden of responsibility is like important.
Absolutely.
And she says a quote in the thing that I wrote down. She said, "So little of who I am happened in the 8 years at the White House.
Wow.
So much more happened before, and much more will happen after." that, she was very conscious not to allow people to freeze her in time and to encapsulate her as just a first lady. She was like, wait, hold it, pump your brakes.
Right.
Before I was a first lady, there's so
So
much
much
more
more.
that happened to
Right.
me
So
and who
much
I
more she
was, right?
accomplished. Right.
And after being a first lady, I'm going to continue. She talked about being that old lady in a wheelchair that's going to continue to just, and another
Right.
thing, and
Right.
another thing. Um,
Right. And I think that's so important, to really know who you are and not just the roles you play. Because
yeah.
your roles aren't necessarily who you are. And I think
Mm,
a lot of times we define ourselves by our roles and not who we are as people.
yeah.
So,
That's so important. Reverend Joanne put in here. Thank you for putting that. Reverend Joanne said it was directed by Nadia Halgren. Kudos to her. She did an awesome
I
job
did.
in that.
Absolutely. Definitely saw a lot of different sides and points to Michelle Obama, so it was awesome. And I think it was kind of cool. One of my favorite scenes was with her and her brother, and her brother was like, "You're gonna wear two belts?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Why do you
yeah.
have?" So even as the first lady, there was still some form of insecurity there. And she was like, "Well, why not?" So kind of, and just that banter between them. But I think it goes to your point before that even as successful people may get, some of those real humanistic emotions are still there.
Yeah, I mean, because at the core, you are still a person.
Right.
We look at people and we forget that at the core, they're still people. They still have feelings. They still have emotions. They still have things that hurt them, that bring them joy.
You're right.
One of the things that she talked about is she said it takes energy to go high.
Absolutely.
It takes energy to go high.
Mm-hmm.
That her becoming the first African American first lady, which I believe that she won't be the last,
Mm-hmm.
but for her to become the first African American first lady, we have to appreciate the fact that it took a considerable amount of energy to get to that place.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, like, we look at it and we're like, I want to be like that. But do you have the energy that it requires to get there?
Right. And to stay there,
Yeah.
the stamina that you're going to need. Like, even thinking about it physically, right? To stay low and to stay to the ground takes no effort.
Hmm.
But in order to get up, to stand up, to reach up, that takes strength, that takes willpower to actually get up and do those things. So the same thing with what she's saying. It takes a lot of strength to rise above everything, your criticism, your critics, all of that stuff, and even yourself to
Yeah.
be able to go high.
Two things I want to leave you all with. And I thought that this was super important. And I hope that you all hear this because it pierced me in a way. As the interview or the documentary was winding down, she's in the car and she was talking about the fact that blacks voted in such a record breaking way
Mm-hmm.
to put them into the White House. And first of all, in 2008, I can remember like as clear as day where I was when I saw CNN report that Senator Barack Hussein Obama was going to be elected and had been elected to be the 44th president of the United States. I remember that like very clearly. I remember that day. Do you remember November 2008? Do you remember where you were, or do you remember anything about that time?
I
Or
do. I was at Eastern Connecticut State, my first professional job outside of grad school.
so you remember working? Do you remember any of the like the parade? The like, do you have like any moment from that in timeline or anything that jumps out to you during that election timeline?
I just remember a sense of pride,
Mm,
just pride and like amazement, somewhat in awe.
yeah.
And looking back at it, I think it's great that a lot of us felt that, but at the same time, I think it's kind of sad that so many of us was in awe that something like this happened. And I don't think that that should be the case,
I mean, I think we all agree, but unfortunately, I think it speaks to where our country is
Right,
in terms of
right.
its inability at times to be progressive and just human, but the fact that we were. Where were you at in November 2008? Do you all remember November 2008, President Barack Obama being elected the 44th President of the United States of America? Do you remember where you were? Put it in the comment section. What were you doing in 2008? I remember being home. I remember specifically being home and watching that. I remember. I know my mom was there, and I remember watching the votes come in and the different states that and I remember that vividly. And I remember like I think for me it wasn't necessarily just awe, it was like it didn't feel real.
Okay.
Because we had seen the Jesse Jacksons and the Sharp and Condoleezza Rice and all these other people that have run and have not been successful, and it just did not seem real at the time. Like, did this really just happen? But something more interesting happened. She talked about even though blacks voted in record-breaking numbers to ensure college students, young people, I think that might have been my first time voting. In like a presidential thing. I think that was my first time voting. As for I think I had done like some of the local ones, for mayor and stuff like that. Well, for a presidential race, that was my first time voting. But I was a college student too. That might have been the first time that legally I was able to vote. But so I was definitely a part of that college base that went out there. But she talked about how disturbed they began to feel once they were voted in that blacks did not continue to vote to give them the Congress that they needed and the House of Representatives that they needed. And she said something in this that it like punched me in my jaw, and I was like, wow, I hope that people are paying attention to this, especially because November is getting ready to come up. She said, my trauma is that people aren't bothered to vote. She said, like, out of all the things that I've been through and out of all the things that I have been disturbed by, my greatest trauma in all of this is that we went to the White House and people are still unbothered to vote. Like, we put up with all of this for y'all. And after we did all of this, the trauma in that is that we thought that this would have changed the culture of African Americans to show them the power of a vote. And she said, the trauma in that is that y'all are so unbothered to vote. That, she talked about that in terms of Trump getting elected. Trump was elected because we did not vote. And so I'm really hoping that this November you all would share that same trauma, that it would bother you if you don't vote, if you don't participate, and not just in the presidential election. That's the biggest one, but in your local elections as well and things like that.
All of that makes a difference, right? Who we vote for in our local determines a lot of time who's going to be in the White House and Congress, all of those things. And I think really making it a bigger deal, right? I saw Niqueva said something about being at home with Veda in her shirt, and I remember all the campaigns. I remember I had my Barack the Vote shirt. I still have it. I'm about to bring it back
Oh,
out.
yeah, I forgot about that one.
Right? They had, and it was like such a huge thing. Like everyone was into voting and talking it up and all these huge campaigns. And I think that it's just as important, maybe even more so now that we're doing these and having these campaigns, even if we're not voting a black person into the White House.
True.
Because whoever is sitting in that White House has a lot of say in things about what we do and what happens within our lives.
Absolutely. I'm seeing. So Niqueva said that she was home, and as you said, the Yes We Can onesie. Tanya said that during that time, November 2008, she was running the Democratic headquarters in New Haven. Lucretia said she was at home watching with her kids and her grandmother. Cherie said that she was in her room watching a presidency for the first time and recording it.
All right, Cherie TV, come on.
Joanna said she was in her college dorm watching the election with her roommates. It was a very celebratory experience, especially being on an HBCU.
Nice.
So I can't even imagine that because we didn't go to HBCU school. So I can't even imagine like that would that would be it. Gina said I was at home glued to the TV with my sisters. Yolanda said I was at home sitting on the floor patiently waiting and how proud I was of our country and called my dad. right?
Nice.
Like think about those older seniors, right? That
Who
like some
didn't
of
think they
them
would see it.
who are like only one generation removed from slavery that are finally able to see somebody that looks like them. Um, Cheryl said, I was sitting on my couch with my kids all night glued to the television, crying my eyes out when the results came in and having to explain to my kids what every tear
Beautiful.
meant.
Beautiful.
Reverend Joanne said I was at home in front of the TV waiting for the results with my family. So this is something that is so important that as we remember what we felt like, that feeling should not be a once in a lifetime feeling.
Agreed.
And in order to ensure that our kids are able to have this kind of feeling with their children, we
Right.
have to continue to vote. We have to
Absolutely.
continue to vote in local elections, in national elections, and all those things. Loretta's even saying, even concerning the census, right?
Right. Which
All
we've
these
talked
things are
about.
so
Absolutely.
important when it comes to making sure that you are putting the people in office that are going to advocate for your needs and for your home and for your well-being. Last thing
Absolutely.
that I wanted to share is, first of all, before we go, were there any like quotes or any like defining moments in this documentary that stuck out to you? That stood out to you? I want you to put that in the comment section. But I'm gonna tell you what stood out to me. I don't know if there's something that stood out to you, and then we'll go
Talked
to
about it.
see
So go ahead.
what they. But one of the things that watching it today that stood out to me is and I wrote it down. That my personal observation through this is that she was an ordinary girl and an extraordinary girl at the same time.
That's good.
That she was what I picked up from this is that she was the woman who was still finding her way, but she was also the woman who had made the way.
Right. That's
And
good. That's
how
good.
profound is that to be to have that kind of duplicity that as I watched her talk to the ladies at the church, and as I watched her talk to the mothers who came for the book signing
Right.
and the kids who she visited at school, her kids, right? As I watched her just talk to all these different people who had influence, people who she didn't even know their names, and as invested in their story as she became and the questions that she asked them and things like that, it was like, wow, like she could be anybody. Like she could be the lady that lives next door.
Right.
But at the same time, she's not the lady that lives next door. She's a lady that lived in the
In the
White
White
House.
House.
And so that was something that was like, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to Chicago and I'm gonna see if she'll hang out with the blank. Like she had that kind of personality where you just feel like
Right.
you could talk
You
to
could
her,
just hang
right?
out with her.
And so
Absolutely.
that was something that I thought, because so many times like when you get up there, you forget to be human, and you forget to connect with people who
Absolutely.
can't do anything for you
Right.
and who may not have anything.
Right.
And watching her, even watching like that last, I think it was the last tour date where Obama showed up, and as they were leaving the venue, they were thanking the wait staff and the janitors and the security guards and
Yep.
everybody that they came into contact with on the way to their car. They said thank you to. Like, those things go a long way to
Absolutely.
just be like human and to just be people, and it doesn't take anything away from us to be successful and nice.
Right. Listen, say that again.
And
So,
so I thought that was something that I would definitely take with me, in
absolutely.
terms of that.
I also liked one of her last scenes with the young girls. She talked about confidence and talked about confidence is something that you have to just give yourself. You can't allow anyone to give you confidence. It doesn't work that way. Like, why
Yeah,
don't you have the
yeah,
confidence? So I thought that was super powerful.
absolutely. Cherie said, "Are you running overseer?" No. I will not be running.
Not
The
at
only
all.
place I'm running to is to the polls. That's about it. Um, I love to see all those women just crying when they walked into her presence. That was so overwhelming.
It was.
That was like so overwhelming to see. Like, there was that one lady that she was like hyperventilating to where they was almost about to call 911.
Right.
She was so overwhelmed.
And I love the way that a first lady handled it.
Yeah,
She said, "What did you expect was going to
yeah,
happen? Who
yeah,
did you expect?" And just like you said, that touchable moments with her, like, it's all right, hun.
yeah.
That was
Yeah,
cool.
she was definitely like super relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Elder Satchel says she gave attention to every person that came to her book signing,
Right.
focusing just on them in that moment. Right,
Right.
powerful. And she talked about how intentional she was to not do anything else,
Mhm.
to not look past them, to not
Right.
look beyond them, but to
Right.
be super present in that moment with every
Absolutely.
single person. Because you have to think about it; these are people that have probably stood in line for hours,
Hours.
right? And that had to, God knows what they had to do to even get a
That's it.
ticket to be able to. And so these are people that, that like she, even though it might have been for a few seconds,
Mhm.
you had her undivided attention.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so that was cool. Reverend Joy said they were real people. Absolutely. The encouragement, Lucretia really enjoyed the encouragement that she gave to the young people. There were so
Good.
many young women that she like touched and like asked their like. That was one thing that I was like, I feel as though I need to do a better job at. Like she was so good at helping people find their story,
Mm.
like the why. And
Mhm.
so like when like it was evident to me, she was talking to the young girl who talked about, the fact that she was in this room with the first lady and she wasn't a part of all these different clubs and
Right.
wasn't,
Right.
this, that she just was a part of the Hispanic
Mhm.
Heritage Club and she worked, right?
Right.
And she asked her, like, why do you work? And I would have never thought about that. I would have just kind of heard her and said, okay, yeah,
Mhm.
but when she asked her why she worked, and she started to tell the story about how her father lost her job and how she was helping out her father and how she was helping to take care of her brothers and this
Mhm.
and that. Like, we sometimes don't even know the people that are in front of us.
That's the truth.
We don't even understand
Absolutely. We
their
don't even know.
story,
Right.
that to just be in a room
Right.
and to just have half of your mind, right? Like the story
Listen.
that is behind that is so important. And, if some people knew your story, they would understand what you do a whole lot more. And so that was
Absolutely.
something that I was like, wow, maybe I need to do a better job at helping people, figuring out people's story, like asking them things,
Mhm.
because she was strategic. Like everybody that she talked
Right.
to, she got to
Absolutely.
like, why do you do that? Why is that
Right.
important for you? And
Your
so
why.
that was something that I would take away from that.
Nice. Tanya says she was such an inspiration. I met her when she was at Cross and she's so down
Mm,
to earth. Awesome. Cheryl said, look each person in the eye, make real contact. Simple things as that, letting people know that you hear them,
yeah.
right? You see them, you hear them is really powerful. Awesome.
And so I don't know what is next for her. I'm not even sure if she knows what's next for her, but
She's
I know
overcoming.
whatever it is going to be great. And so thank y'all for checking that out with us. It was really really good. I don't know if Deacon Monroe is on here. Kev, if you're on here, say something. Uh, do something. Let us know if you're on here tonight. But he was definitely one of the ones that was really passionate about us watching this. I know you had seen it, and some other people had sent it to me as well. And so, thank you all for that recommendation. So we have picked a movie for next week. Next week is the 29th.
Yes.
You want to tell them what else next week is? Next Friday?
It's our anniversary.
Hey.
Yay.
And
Exciting
so we're gonna spend our anniversary with y'all. It's our 10th year anniversary. It's a major milestone. We had originally planned to be in Hawaii, but that's all
Hawaii.
right. It may
That's
be
all right.
delayed, but it's not
Not
denied.
denied.
We'll get there. I ran into Yolanda and Pat earlier in the store, and I told them that maybe we'll put a palm tree or something in the backyard or something like that. And
We'll go.
and so we'll get to Hawaii, but we're going to spend our 10th year anniversary with you
With
all.
you
Don't beat me
guys.
up because I did give Lady Bland the option. I said, well, we
You
can get
did.
another couple to cover us for next week and talk about it, and she said no. I'd rather do this with people. So we will be with you all next week. We have picked a movie. Um, and the movie next week is a pretty interesting movie. It is entitled First Impression. It's a made for Netflix movie, First Impression.
Mhm.
There's the guy who plays Jacob in Greenleaf
Love
is
Greenleaf.
in
Did
that
y'all see it's
in
coming back?
the
I can't
movie.
wait.
The last season.
I
The
I'm
last season.
sad
The
about
last
that, but
season.
I'm glad it's
And I forget the young lady's name, but she was in Medea Family Reunion. She was the sister that ended up getting married to N. And then these people, I'm sure y'all recognize them, David and Tamala Mann, and she is it? I don't want to mess up her name. Martin something, but she was in My Wife and I think she was the mother in My Wife and Kids or something like that. So, so it is an interesting movie. I want you all to check out the movie. It is First Impression, and we're getting ready in a few minutes to show a trailer for that movie. But I don't know if anybody has seen it. It came out in 2018. And so it's kind of like a romantic comedy kind of movie. It's pretty interesting. I mean, it is a Netflix movie, so just to kind of, just to put it out there, it is a Netflix movie. But I think that if you haven't seen it already, you all will enjoy it. Lucretia said, "Looks good. I'm loving y'all movie picks." I do what I can. You've done well too. You've done well too.
Thank you guys for the congrats. We're excited.
Thank you. And so check out that. And listen, we're getting ready to go. It's been good hanging out with y'all. I hope that you all enjoy your evening. Anything else you want to share with the people?
Ladies, we have our call tomorrow. We're actually going to somewhat continue in this discussion. We're going to do the woman in the mirror. So we're going to have some discussion, some dialogue. So please join us. I'll post the link once we get off of this call. So please join us tomorrow on Zoom at 5 o'clock.
Sounds interesting. All the women join Lady Bland for the tea tomorrow. And then Sunday, join us for service at 11:30 a.m. You don't want to miss it. I'm preaching a message entitled Securing the Seed. So check out the trailer for this week's movie, First Impression, and we'll see you back here, same time, same place, next week. See y'all.
Love you guys.
I'm just not sold on this online thing. I mean, it's a little spooky.
Take a picture with me and Handle and Persia, yeah? Say cheese.
Spooky girl, come on, you know that's how I felt, Chris.
Says it's right for me, but they're wrong.
Listen, man, I met Fran on the internet. And we got this adventurous side. Dude, I thought I told you to bring it later.
This is later.
Hola, Vernon.
Hey, friend.
Cariño. Vamos.
Amor, voy a conseguir la whipped cream y aloe vera gel y encontrarse con usted en el bedroom closet. Oh! This girl, she's special. Her name's
Imani, with two eyes. I did meet a guy at Jazzy's.
Did you tell her?
Tell her what?
That you're broke.
Times are hard and money's real tight, but you've got a plan cause it's your life. But you better think hard before you walk the walk that
Sir,
in your heart.
do you know where he lives? Does he have any kids? Does he have a job?
Dude, you gotta work on your outfit, man. You ain't dressed right, dog.
For the manager.
No. He said manager position.
No.
Speak to us now. Whoa. Here in this place, we humbly bow. Our hearts are waiting. Speak, Lord.
Look, you wouldn't happen to know about a website called First Impression, would you?
Okay, wait. You're anxious out?
Love just can't be forced. Ain't nothing